Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Your Business Mom podcast. I am Anna, your business mom, and we are here to teach you hard lessons on surviving in business with the warmth and brutal honesty that only a mother can give. I am here with Naomi. She is an incredible, multi-talented professional here to teach you so much about your finances and the craziness of bookkeeping and business. And disclaimer, she is in Canada. Is that correct, Naomi?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I'm in Ontario.
Yes, she's in Ontario. So any financial advice, just remember the context. She is in Ontario, but you're always welcome to reach out to her after this episode if you have questions for follow up, and we'll make sure you know how to do that. So welcome, Naomi. Say hello to the people.
Oh, thank you so much, Anna, for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you on. For the context of how we met, we interacted on one of my favorite places, LinkedIn, and we just really vibed with the type of work we do. We have very bubbly, talkative personalities, and I think we just hit that off. So I was super excited to have you on to chat more about your business. I think you're in a really cool building phase where you're doing a lot of new and interesting things that we'll get into talking about. But for anyone who doesn't know you, give them kind of the high level, what does Naomi do? How does she serve her clients? And how do we get to this point so that they know where we're coming from?
Yeah, well, I just decided to make a new label for myself called Live Action Bookkeeper. What I like to do is I like to fill in sort of the process gaps, the unknowns that people might have about just sort of how their bookkeeping works in conjunction with their finances and with their accounting. And so I'm putting out courses and I'm putting out YouTube tutorials and videos to sort of help answer those questions that I've come across in my travels. So I've definitely worked with different business owners, a lot of office managers, and that's what I really started in with is the consultations with office managers and bookkeeping admins and training new
Mm.
bookkeepers as well. So it's really refreshing to work with people who are eager to learn, but just are ready to fill in the gaps.
I love that. So I'm sure that if anybody Googles, the most common bookkeeping issues or financial struggles, they could probably find the most common issues that people face. But what I would love to know is what some of the more interesting or random issues or challenges you face that people might not think of until they happen.
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
So what are some of the more unique things? Well, I mean, I think people don't realize that they're not going to remember things. Like
Mm.
they don't remember that they're going to forget. We feel like when we take in information that it's in our head and it's going to stay in our head, simple things, and it
Yeah.
really just doesn't. It just disappears. And so a lot of times, you'll ask somebody, "Oh, what was this?" And they're like, "It was," and they'll just completely sort of think that they would at the time. You just know you're going to remember. And then another thing that I've noticed is like when I'm teaching, training people and we're going through things, they'll have
Mhm.
aha moments. But then the next time we meet, they'll be like, can you tell me that again? And they'll be very embarrassed that they don't remember. I know you told me this. And I'm like, have patience with yourself, right? Your brain doesn't hook the things the first time you hear it. So that's something
Mm.
that a lot of people don't sort of keep in mind. And that sort of leads to the one thing that I found really interesting. There's two groups of, you want to say business owners, if you will. So two groups of
Yeah.
business owners. There's one group who just know that having a dedicated bank account for just business transactions and a dedicated credit card for just business transactions and never using their personal accounts is what you do. And then there's the other
Mhm.
people who say that's probably a good idea, but I don't do it. And I'm like, yes, but you don't understand how much extra work, time, effort, headache you're not going to remember. You're not
Yeah.
going to remember that you bought that thing. And when you have a dedicated bank and dedicated credit card, you have an automagical list. Like you want to set things
Mm.
up that do things for you, right? It's worth its weight in gold.
So I love systems. So let's dive deeper into this, right? So I love, and I learned this from my dad. He told me this when I got started, and it took me forever to listen to him if we're being honest. But that's a great tip. You need to separate business and personal. What are other systems, whether it's certain types of accounting software, whether it's just having a bookkeeper, whether it's, some kind of receipt filing, what are the other systems or tools people can use to keep track? Because day to day, at least speaking from like a non-financial niche, it's really hard to remember to like categorize all these expenses and keep track of them in a manageable way. So, what other systems or tips do you have for people to do that? I'm sure people need them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like finding the right system for you it takes a
Mm.
little bit more time than you would think, right? So sort of give
Mm.
yourself that time. And then another thing about the systems is that you have to combine real life with tech. So if you're just
Okay.
relying on tech, it's not really going to work very well. And you're just relying on real life, it's going to take more work than it's worth, right? So you want to remember that it takes both of those things. So in terms, you were talking about records, right? How do we keep
Yes.
our records? And then we're definitely moving to a digital age, right? Like, or
Yeah.
actually, we are in the digital age now.
Right.
And so I find personally, like, there's a lot out there. I really appreciate the ones that synchronize with the bookkeeping software, right?
Mm.
And so if you look at whatever bookkeeping software that you're using, and just sort of look at what apps integrate with it, that would be, a place to start. But I would say my personal, shall we say, tech stack is
Yeah.
Dext, right? And so what Dext does is you just use your phone, you take a picture and you upload it, or you can upload from your hard drive, like from your desktop, or
Mm.
you can upload from your email. And it also does
Okay.
these fetching, so you can like connect certain utility bills with it and it'll suck in the bills for you. So with the
Nice.
email, it's great because if you get a bill sent to you consistently from a vendor, and with a vendor email, you can just set that to auto forward directly to Dext.
Mm.
Like the less you do, the better, right? Like it's thinking
Love that.
ahead and setting up those automations. But Dext, I feel Dext is definitely worth the investment. HubDoc's
Mm.
another great one as well. They're not the
Okay.
only ponies though. There's some good ones out there. And that
Yeah.
integrates for my personal favorite bookkeeping software right now, which is QBO or QuickBooks Online.
Hmm.
But if somebody's just starting out and they're not quite sure if they want to make that investment, you can still use Google Docs, right? Or OneDrive, right? So taking a picture on your phone and putting it right to OneDrive, and
Yeah.
you can search by like words, it'll like read, and it doesn't help with data entry. So that's why there's extra work there. But I mean, like I said, if you've already got it, that's something to use. And if you're not going to be using Dext or something like that to sort of group and sort the paperwork, then if you're doing
Hmm.
it manually with Google Docs, I would definitely do it by month. And
Okay.
a great idea is to each folder I would number it, like, for example, my folder this month is 2025.05, because now it's going to go in
Mm.
order. Like if you call it May, your alphabetical
Yeah.
is not right. And then each year has its own folder. So don't keep
Hmm.
a folder of something that's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger for the next 7 years. Cause like you want to keep it sort of current and organize it that way. So that would be my tech side of the paperwork.
Yeah.
But the non-tech side is what process works for you, right? Everybody's got a different personality, a different tendency. Some people like to have a list, and some people like, if you put that on the list, it'll guarantee I don't do it, right? Like you've got
Yeah.
both types of people. Some people like to take care of uploading the documents right away. And then some people like to do it weekly. So I suggest a weekly win day. This is like my big thing that works really well for me is I have
Okay.
a weekly win day, and it can be a fabulous Friday or a super Saturday, whichever works best in the flow. But that weekly win day is the day that I sit down. Personally, I empty out my
Mm.
purse because all my receipts are
Okay.
in my purse. I empty out my purse, I upload them all to Dext, and then
Yeah.
I like sync them with my software, and then I clear my bank feed, and then I
Love
look
that.
at my business calendar for the week ahead. What's due is GST, like for the entire week ahead. So I know what's coming up in the week. So then
Hmm.
I've thought about it. I've written it down. And then the rest of the week, I can just go ahead and know that I've already thought about it and be distracted by all the things that we need to do for the business. So weekly win day is the reality process. And you can also use that time to like refine your processes. Like I keep forwarding
Yeah.
ads or something, stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I love that. I'm a big fan of an admin day. I do that a lot myself because otherwise you really can't stay organized, especially as a solopreneur, which a lot of people are these days.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to dive taking a step back. Your world sounds very organized because you're very good at what you do, but it also sounds very stressful and chaotic to someone like me. So I'm curious, do you encounter whether it's like tax season or, are there certain periods of time where your work gets insanely stressful? And if so, how do you deal with it? Or are you just like, this is what I love to do, so it doesn't stress me out? I'm so curious about that.
Well, it's been a bit of a journey and it still is.
Yeah.
So when I talked about tendencies, I got that idea from an author called Gretchen Rubin. She talks about 4 different tendencies, and I find that very helpful for myself. You've got
Okay.
obligers, and an obliger is like a people pleaser. If you want to go running, you have a running partner that'll help you go. Then there's upholders, and an upholder is the one who likes to make their own checklists and likes to check the stuff off. And even
Wow.
if I did something that wasn't on the checklist, I'll add it to the checklist and check it off. Like, just who cares? But I do. I'm an upholder.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's
We like the
questioners.
honesty.
It is. And there's questioners who need to know sort of why to do something, and that helps them do it. And then there's rebels
Okay.
who, if you want a rebel to do something, and we all have a bit of everything, like we all recognize that. A rebel
Yeah.
is somebody who takes their identity very seriously. So if you're a rebel and you want to run, or if you're an entrepreneur and you want to run a business, that's what you are. You are an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So it's not a checklist now, it's what you do, it's your identity. So that's really the way
Mhm.
to. So for me, I'm a questioner and an upholder. So for me, if I
Okay.
know why I'm doing something, then that's going to motivate me to do it. And so the why, and of course, as an upholder, I do like my checklists, and I'm very forgetful. So I need a checklist. So I have checklists
Fair.
everywhere. I'm a checklist queen. But when you talk about
Yes.
stress and how I handle it and sort of the seasons of stress,
Yeah.
I've had seasons of being an employee. I've
Mhm.
been a subcontractor. I've been on my own with my own
Mhm.
clients. And recently, I was just working for a bookkeeping firm for a couple of years with a
Okay.
fabulous CEO owner. He was very
Yeah.
diligent about making sure that even during tax season, we weren't working too much overtime. Like,
Love that.
he put the like almost like the mental health of his employees number one. So I've been very blessed to have that sort of even flow.
Nice.
But I did find it stressful that I wasn't getting my own personal projects done, and work for this employer remotely makes it so hard. Anna, like, that's the
Mm.
one I
Why
thought
is
remote,
that?
because when my friend goes into the office, they roll in around 8:30, they go to the
Yeah.
coffee, they make themselves a coffee. They're getting paid
Yeah.
to just roll in, say hi to people, sit down at their desk, right? And they do, and they work, and then they get up and they go to the bathroom. Well, if I'm working for either a client or a boss, I've done both.
Yeah.
I have a timer. And I'm
Yeah.
clocking my hours. And all of a sudden, if you try to get like 7 hours of solid work in, it's revealing how much we're not working during the day when you set a timer on yourself. So
Yeah.
I found, like, by the end of the day, doing that timer thing, by like 6 or 7, I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to look at the computer again. I'm just done with it. So because I was having such a struggle, that was stressing
Yeah.
me out, not being able to work on my own stuff as well. I gave my boss notice and I said, I love you so much. I'm so sorry. It's me, not you. So that's sort of,
Yeah.
and so I'm still in that. Like, I just left that position last fall, and I'm still in that
Mhm.
transition period. And I'm personally finding that meditation for me is helping me to not be as, like, keep thing in perspective and not be quite as
I love
stressed. So
that.
that would be where my journey's at anyway.
That's beautiful. I think, we always have, especially when we appear in these like public forums, whether it be social media or a podcast or like, just talking to people in a professional setting. I feel like there's this pressure, no matter what point in your journey you're in, to like, "Oh, this is the point that I have everything together and let me present myself in this perfect way." And I love that you're like, no, actually, like I'm meditating and vibing and trying to figure it out. And I think that's really helpful because a lot of people, whether it's due to layoffs, whether it's due to a great idea or, the economy, whatever it is, a lot of people in 2025, especially I've noticed, are suddenly becoming business owners. And
Mhm.
having been one for several years now, I watch the people going through the early stages and I just want so badly to like reach out a hand and hold their hand and be like, look, take a deep breath, document your expenses, get the sleep, there'll be more work tomorrow. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to see you be so honest about where you are. Because in those first couple of years after leaving the more stable other thing you have, it can be a really exciting time and a really stressful time. So thank you for that vulnerability. I am curious though, on the flip side of meditation, what gets you excited? What are the things that you're doing in your business that maybe are like different or interesting or that, kind of make it worth it to do this path on your own? It sounds like you have something that you're working on that was worth leaving that role. So tell us more about it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting how you said what gets you excited. And
Yeah.
immediately my mind went to a meeting I had on Friday, because what I was doing, and I still have some consultation clients that I've had for many years and I'm keeping them. And
Yeah.
whenever they have, and it's so fun for me to go on a Zoom call one-on-one with
Hmm.
an office manager, a business owner who's like, Naomi, here are the questions. Can you help? And I can. And I love that. That's so, so fun. But the reason that I've shifted a bit is because
Hmm.
I was just constantly answering emails the whole time.
Yeah.
So the more consulting people I had, the more I wasn't able to create the things that I wanted. And the things that I
Yeah.
want to create are courses that people can take, sort of like to go through and answer those questions. What
Yeah.
you had just said right now, like you want to, the people who are starting a business now, you're like, I remember I was there, and don't worry, these are the things I learned. Yes, I want
Yeah.
a TARDIS. You know, TARDIS from Doctor Who. Doctor
No, I
Who's
don't. I'm so sorry.
no, Doctor Who has a phone box, a phone booth that is a
Okay.
time machine. So I want to
Mm.
have my own time machine and go back in time to some when business owners start and say, "Oh, I just want you to know this, this, and this," and then you'll in a year you'll be so glad you had that information. So sharing that
Yeah.
information really gets me excited. So going to back to your question and about
Mm.
that Friday meeting I had, instead of now taking on new consultation clients right now. So right now, again,
Mhm.
I'm working on courses and programs. I've got some live bookkeeping tutorials that I'm doing each week that I'm really
Ooh.
excited about on YouTube. But
Yeah.
when people now email me for questions, I'm like, you know what? I have a free Zoom meeting the first Friday of every month. Just it's
Oh,
free
that's
for an
cool.
hour. So that was my solution to all of these people asking me to help. I'm like, you know what? I'm just
Yeah.
going to have an AMA, or I can ask me anything once a month.
Like office hours, you're a professor. I love it.
Pardon?
I said it's like office hours. You're a professor. I love it.
Oh, I hadn't considered that. Office hours. Maybe that works more than AMA,
Take
but
it. Feel free.
thank you. But so I just had that Zoom meeting on Friday, and every month that I have that Zoom meeting and I've got some
Yeah.
new business people or office managers or colleague bookkeepers come in. And it's just such an uplifting connection time of like,
Yeah.
I learn from them as much as like I get to share stuff with them, and I learn from them too. And that's just,
Yeah.
it's so exciting and it's so enjoyable to just be able to be there for each other, which is why I wanted to create this launch and thrive program for new businesses, that as a cohort we can all meet together once a month and
Yeah.
check in with each other. So yeah, you're right. I got a lot of different things going on, but it all centers around sort of answering those questions at the right time. I think that's what I'm really glad and excited to do, and trying to figure out if I wasn't being paid for it, then I would do it just for fun. But now I have to figure out how to monetize it. That's really the
Yeah.
difficult spot that I'm in right now, but I'm still having fun.
I feel like that's the trap for all the helpers. It's like, oh, I want to help, but also like I have to keep a roof over my head, guys,
Yeah.
and that's a delicate balance. I am curious. One thing that stood out to me in the business world and in the world of courses and support and consultations even, I often find that a lot of business services, business resources, business content does center around the beginning of the journey,
Mhm.
because obviously your business and the things you do in it are so much easier to manage if you do everything right from the beginning. So I am curious for people who are, a few years in, or even myself, like I always tell people I stumbled into business because I was like freelancing because where I was working was like cutting hours at the time. And then it became like a full-time job out of nowhere because I was so busy with clients, right? And so,
Mm.
what's your advice, whether it be resources, whether it be mindset, for people who are like a few years in and the financial side is starting to be the stressor? Maybe they're the people who've like been in business for 3 years and never had an LLC, stuff like that. What's your advice for those people? I want to show them some love because I do feel like we show the newbies a lot, but I feel like the people kind of in the middle get a little left out. So share some advice if you don't mind for those people.
Oh, yes, absolutely. One sentence is catch up and never give up,
Okay.
because it can feel overwhelming. So there's a few different approaches, but from a
Mm,
practical, and again, I want to just highlight for a second the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper. So an
mhm.
accountant is all about at the end of the year, what do the totals say? And a bookkeeper is, are the totals in correctly? Does it balance? So there are two different approaches. So I'm speaking as a bookkeeper, not as an
Yeah.
accountant. So less about income tax and more about records, which is actually what
Yeah.
you're asking about, which is perfect. So when somebody, if you've got a pile of paperwork or a pile of transactions that you're
Yeah.
like procrastinating because it's gonna be not fun, right?
Right.
What I would suggest is break it into smaller bits.
Mhm.
Decide to do last week's bookkeeping, just last week's bookkeeping, because
Okay.
so I say catch up and never give up. Like keep start keeping the current now, because you're going to like catch up to yourself, right? If you're constantly
Mm,
starting in January, you're never going to get to May 5th, right?
that's a good point. I
Right.
like that.
And don't feel, just do last week. Just do
Yeah.
last week, right? And then if you do have catch up work that you need to do, then what you're going to do is on your weekly win day, just take
Hmm.
an extra hour, just until you get caught up, just until, take an extra hour
Yeah.
and do 1 month, the furthest one back, right? So
Yeah.
let's say January, do January. And if you, in that hour, if you only get 2 weeks of January done, you know what? Now you know it takes an hour to do January. So then or it takes 2 hours to do a month, for example. So now you can sort of plot out on your calendar, sort of like, if it takes me 2 weeks, like an hour to do 2 weeks of January, then if I
Hmm.
spend an hour every week, then it's going to be here that I'm going to get caught up to May, because I only have to catch up to May because I just did the bookkeeping last week. So
I
that
love that.
is one practical method of doing it. But here's the thing. A lot of times you're not doing your own bookkeeping. You're having somebody
Hmm.
else do the bookkeeping, right? So you want to keep in touch with that person who's doing the bookkeeping. If we're talking about hard truths, one of the hard truths about running a business, whether you're starting it now or you're 5 years in, nobody is going to care more about your bookkeeping than you.
Mm,
Nobody is going to care more about your bookkeeping than you, right? Like
yeah.
think of your own clients, right? With the creations and custom creations that you do, if you've got a client that's
Yeah.
in touch with you, answering your questions, asking, hey, Anna, I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. I thought you were working on that project for me. And you can say, oh, yeah, absolutely. Like those are the clients that are going to get your attention. Your clients who
Yeah.
don't care about the solution you're building for them, they're going to go to the bottom of the pile. And it's the same with
Yeah.
your bookkeeper. Nobody's going to care more about
Mm,
your bookkeeping than you. And your accountant just wants it done.
okay.
And the other misconception is people feel like they're doing their books for the government. You're doing your books for you. You're getting your books
Why do you
done
say that?
for you. Well, you need to, if you want to run a successful business, you want to be
Hmm.
in touch with how much your revenues are as compared to your costs. And that information is gold, and that information is in your bookkeeping. The government is second. Like I don't care about them right now. I just want to know if what I'm doing is
Mm,
profitable and what I need to pivot, change, increase, or decrease. And the
I
only way
love
I
that.
can see that is with my financials. And if you're doing your books for you, then you know that you can, some people like, I can't claim an expense because I lost the receipt. I'm like, you're doing your books for you. You want to know that you spent the money, put in the expense. It might not pass an audit or review, but you're still trying to tell the government the most realistic number. And the realistic number is you spent that
You
money.
did spend it.
So put the money in. You're the one that wants to see the financials more than anybody else at the beginning. And then the bank will want to see it if you want a loan. And then the government wants to see it. So they're actually
Okay.
third. Of course, they get angry the most. That's why
They do.
they,
We fear them the most. But you know what? I like the empowerment angle because ultimately I feel like a lot of things in business do come from fear, right? Like, oh no, profits are down this month, or oh no, expenses are. And I love the idea, like, for example, with this podcast, right? Like, I have new software that I have all these things. And I love the idea of tracking it in like an empowering way and being
Mhm.
like, okay, what's the long term as I continue to track this? What are we getting back? I think that's a really cool way to think about it. And I want to pivot because you have helped us a lot. I feel like there's a lot of free game you've already shared. You're giving free game the first Friday of every month. So I now see you as a helper. I want to know what helps you. Are there people in your life? Is there practices, in addition to your meditation? How do you fill your cup so that you can show up with this level of like passion, excitement, and energy every day? Because I know how hard that is to do. I would love to know for anybody who's like, oh, I want to be excited about work like Naomi. What are the things that fill your cup, and let you show up in this way? Because I think it's really cool how you show up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I've been just so blessed with just great people coming in to my life. Like it feels,
Yeah.
I don't know, like I feel like my mom and my dad are still to this day extremely
Yeah.
encouraging. Like I am an only child, and so I get
Okay.
all of the attention. So I'm pretty lucky that way. And like they're always like whenever I'm talking to them, like my mom bought my book and my dad's like suggesting different apps to
Yeah.
try with AI and like, have you used AI with your courses yet? Like they're both really supportive. And I like 100% know that I would not be where I am without them at all.
Shout
Like,
out mom and dad. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
My mom is very engaging with people. She likes to talk.
Hmm.
and she's got a lot of heart. She really feels things. And my
Yeah.
dad is very logical and a bit of an introvert and would much prefer to
Okay.
be in his office by himself. And I just feel so lucky that I have both of that. Like I enjoy being with people, but then I
Yeah.
recharge by myself. And I think I just
Mm.
answered your question without realizing it, is
Mhm.
that I do enjoy the people in my life, but I definitely need to make sure that I have Naomi time on my own. Because
Okay.
even if it's just my weekly win day is important for sure, but
Yeah.
Sunday nights, it's all about me. Like Sunday nights, I'm going to have a shower and make sure I do all the girl stuff that we like to do with our hair and stuff like that.
Everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I just sort of like a total like, use the soaps that you don't use until special. No, use the soap, burn the candles. So they're just going
The
to get done.
expensive ones.
Exactly. Yeah, so I definitely make sure to make time for myself. And I
Yeah.
talk and I try to ask a lot of questions of my friends and my family. So in preparation for this podcast, like I'm like, I wonder
Yeah.
if Anna's going to ask me about a story where I learned a hard business truth. And I'm like, I can't think of like a really engaging one because all of
Mhm.
the really big hard truths I've learned, I've like business owners 3 years in come to me with a bunch of stuff to catch up and they're feeling stressed. I'm like, don't
Yeah.
worry, get through this. Make a plan. That's, let's make a plan. You'll feel better. But
Mhm.
that's their stories. That's not mine. And I understood
Yeah.
that the feel of this was more also about our stories. So I went and I asked my son, he's 19. And I said,
Oh, nice.
Aiden, I says, Aiden, like I'm trying to come up, like think if there's a story that I've learned, like a hard truth, a business story. And and I
Mhm.
can't like, have I ever mentioned anything to you or have you ever seen me do something? And he's like,
Yeah.
Mom, he says, you take on way too much, but you have not learned that lesson yet.
Oh, he just said that to you?
So
Okay.
there's my cup filler right there. My kid, my son, he's like, funny, you haven't learned
Yeah.
the lesson yet, but yet it like notices me and sees me. And again, just blessed to
Yeah.
have such a good kid. He's also an only child and
Ah,
gets all of my attention.
I love that you passed that on. That's beautiful. That's so funny. I feel like we don't give, all these successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, even just people like moving up in corporate, anybody who's kind of like made a name for themselves. I don't as often as I do the mom and dad conversation, which we love mom and dads, yay. Or as often as we see like my mentor, I don't see kids mentioned as often, but I do feel like our kids, when we are working parents, I feel like they're such a bigger part of our ability to grow and succeed than like people vocalize the credit for. And maybe it's because we don't think about it, right? Because that's our life, that's not our work. But I would love to know, you said your son's 19. I'm just thinking about the career journey you've had. In addition to him telling you, hey, take care of yourself, you do too much, which thank you, Aiden. Shout out to you. Are there other times where, needing to provide for him or something that he said or did, have there been other times that like having a child changed how you showed up in a business setting, for better or for worse?
Oh, once you have a kid, it's like your heart is now moving around the world outside of your
Yeah.
body. I've definitely have been very fortunate with childcare in terms of,
Yeah.
I mean, I was a single mom and this is unrelated, but like I just remember having the problem of I didn't have a car and I had to figure out how
Mm.
to get my son to daycare and myself to work without a car. There was two buses, a bus that like I worked in the next town over. So I had to take a bus to the daycare, drop Aiden off, wait for the city bus. Then I had to walk to where I worked. And so I was telling my dad about this. And I'm like, Dad, I'm trying to figure this out. This is like, this is 20 years ago. So maybe 18, whatever. He was 2.
Mhm.
1 or 2. And my dad said, is there not some grandma somewhere that whatever money that you would have spent on both of those monthly bus passes,
Yeah.
is there some grandma who would just take that money for Christmas money and for the next, because it
Mhm.
was just 3 months until I got my car or my license, and
Yeah.
said, and just would drive you to and from work and help you drop off your kid for the same amount of money that you'd spend on the bus pass. Like she's not doing anything. Maybe
Okay.
there's just go on Kijiji and ask. So
Yeah.
Kijiji, I don't know if that's in the States, but it's like Craigslist.
Okay.
So just go on Craigslist and ask. And like my dad just having this really unique idea and unique approach. And so I,
Yeah.
so I put it on Craigslist. Like, not have to be a grandma, but this is my
Yeah.
situation. And I'd have to get 2 monthly bus passes. It would cost this much. I'd bump it up, obviously, because of And
Yeah.
actually, it was this wife whose husband worked right there
Oh,
and
cool.
like in the same area. And already had
Yeah.
a baby seat in the car because they had a baby, but he wouldn't have the baby with him.
Yeah.
So I had like, he would pick me up in the morning and me and my kid and just wait until I dropped him off to take, and he'd bring me home. And that was just for 3 months. And I think that wasn't my kid affecting me, other than the fact that having the kid, right? Thinking outside the box, thinking about something like, and also I feel like I have this tenacity to say there's got to be an answer. Like I just got
Mm,
to keep figuring, everything's figure outable, right?
yeah.
So again, I just think I get that from my dad. It's like, think outside the box. Like don't just say it's only the bus pass that you need. And then a lot of people, it is hard without a car. It is, especially with kids, and
Yeah.
everything's getting more expensive nowadays. And just remembering that time that I had to push through it, now I feel so lucky and blessed to have a car, but not everybody does. So, the
Mm.
different perspectives that you get being a mom and being a daughter, those sort of things.
I appreciate that. And that really leads me into at the end of each episode, um, before we get into the last couple of things, I always like to feel like I took away a lesson. So, for example, in the Love Your Business Mom newsletter every week, there's an overall lesson and we dive into it, right? And I feel like every time I talk to a person and I dig into their career and their story and their life, there's always some kind of lesson I take away from that. And I would say with you, I feel like I've gotten several lessons today, but I feel like the key takeaway is that idea sprinkled throughout that everything is figure outable. I think
Mm-hmm.
you just have to be willing to be creative and you have to be willing to accept that it might not go exactly how you were picturing it,
Mm-hmm.
but you can reach the goal. And I appreciate that you acknowledge kind of the different levels of privilege and access that make it how much harder is that goal going to be to reach, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are people who couldn't pay afforded to pay somebody, right, to take their kid
Exactly.
and all these things. But I love that you're like, hey, I'm not going to accept this being the outcome. I think that's a beautiful form of resistance. And I think that's a cool thing to take away. So, what would you say if people are in a business or in the life context, they're struggling with a difficult situation? What would be one actionable thing they can do um, to actually try to get creative and solve their problem? You can suggest any action. It doesn't solve the whole thing, but how could they get started to do that?
Well, definitely think things down into smaller problems. You're not going
Hmm.
to be able to solve the whole thing, right? So
Yeah.
break it down into smaller problems and then see if you can solve that smaller problem. And
Mm,
that smaller problem, and like talk about it with other people, because other people are going through the same problems or they'll have a different
yeah.
perspective, right? So break it down. And when we say everything's figure outable, it's figure outable if you break it down into the small. When things feel so overwhelming, you don't want to do it. Going back into the catching up stuff, it's like, I don't want
Yeah.
to do 3 years of catch up. I don't have time. Do you have time to do a week? Move the needle forward. So just break it into
Love that.
smaller actionable items, or figure out. And if you get stuck on any one of those bits, move on to a
Yeah.
different bit. So you always feel like you're moving forward. Have grace and patience with yourself. Because as I said, as I've been working with people and explaining things and answering their
Hmm.
questions, I have to tell that, not have to, we have to hear things more than once.
Right.
Right. And if we recognize that that's just how our brains work and give ourselves and each other a little bit of grace, then that's
Right.
also going to help us solve the problems. And a lot of times it's to do with communication and understanding how the other person might be, where they're at in their journey. That's also really important as well. So communication, grace, and
Yeah.
break it into little bits. It sounds like contrite that everybody says that, but it's because it works. So
Hey, I think that's valid. I think sometimes if something's like basic or something simple, it's probably repeating itself for a reason. So I love that. I do have one more question for you. You are one of my illustrious guests on season one, the inaugural season of Love Your Business Mom. I'm so grateful to have you as a part of this group of people. One question that I've asked everyone is that the theme of this season is family values. And I don't mean that in any connotation or different sense of the word. I mean, literally, what is a value in your own family that you bring into your work every day? And I tell on every episode, mine is honesty. The greatest example is if you do something to get in trouble, my kids know, hey, if you tell me, you get in 3 times less trouble, right? And so I bring that into work by being real with my clients. Not too long ago, I had this leak in my ceiling and I didn't have a ceiling for a while. And I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm just dealing with this crazy thing. Here's a, but I think when you show up honestly, whether it's good or bad, right? Hey, I'm ahead. Here's a preview. I think it allows me to be a better professional and build better relationships. So, what would you say is one of your family values that you bring into your work?
This is why we resonate. This is why, like, I just immediately feel like just really resonated with your work and your message. Does
Thank
that sum
you.
it up? Your word is honesty. I don't have to think about it. My word is transparency, and it's basically the same thing, but that's
I
my
love
word.
it.
Transparency. I feel like transparency, as you said, it's not always the easiest thing to do at all times, but all
Hmm.
times it is the best option. Even when it
Yeah.
hurts, it's going to hurt less later if if you do the tough thing now. Transparency. And when you're not sure what to say, the
Hmm.
easiest thing is the truth, right? Like, I remember I recently, not recent, well, I did
Yeah.
have a breakup recently, and
I'm so
I
sorry
was,
to hear.
yeah, we all go through it. But a
Yeah.
friend of mine is like, well, you can just tell them XYZ. I'm like, or I could just tell them why. Like, their feelings might be hurt, but
Yeah.
at least it won't come back like, oh, it's because I don't see you every Friday, then I'll make myself available every Friday. Well, now, I'm stuck.
Right.
Like, it's just easier to say,
Yeah.
this is how I'm feeling, and more talk about my own story. That's another thing too, is people have, when you tell your story and when you want to listen to somebody else's
Yeah.
story, it's not about fact. It's just about our experiences and hearing each other. So transparency and listening to stories. I think those would be the things that I'd like to have in my family, my friends, and my work.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Thank you for joining us today. I feel like when I go to edit this later, I'm going to enjoy so many of the little tidbits. I feel like you offered so much professional and personal advice that the listeners will appreciate. So we appreciate you joining us today. In return, we want to know for sure if people resonate with what you said today, if people really need help with their finances, where do people find you? How do they access your content? And of course, I'll be linking everything, important like the book and stuff that we talked about in the show notes, but kind of give your plug of, where do you want people to follow you? Where do you want people to reach out to you? How can people talk to you more and follow up?
Anna, thank you so much for like putting together this great podcast. Like, it just resonates with me so much. It's like, I want to
Thank
help.
you.
I've got information. I've learned the hard way. Let me help. That's
Yes.
why I was so excited to be a part of this. And if people have any questions, so my website is naomiwilkins.ca. And so that's sort of like the go-to place where I sort of list the different projects that I'm working on and the case study that I'm having up on YouTube. There's a contact
Hmm.
page there and everything. And also where you can register for the monthly Zoom sessions. And
Yeah.
then my most prized thing is my newsletter. And I love my newsletter because it practices what I preach, right? It lists what's coming up due for Canadian businesses in the month ahead so that you can, I call it
Hmm.
prep your business calendar, begin with the end in mind. And then I also have
Yeah.
3 hacks or resources. I
Hmm.
pepper those tidbits in every month. And I just do it once a month because I find that we all have a lot of newsletters. So I just
Yeah.
sort of try to keep it short and sweet. But well, it's a long one. It's just monthly. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely my
You keep it
website.
infrequent.
Yeah, that's the word. So yeah, it's my website and my newsletter. Those are my 2 go-to places where I like to stay in touch with people.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Naomi. Everybody go reach out to her, ask her questions. I'm not even Canadian, but I want the tips. So I'm going to go subscribe to your newsletter after this. But we
Awesome.
really appreciate you being here and have a great one. We'll see you next week. Bye,
Thanks so
everybody.
much, Anna. Bye, everyone. Thank you.